Well, good morning. It is good to be back at Theta Baptist, and good to see you on this Mother's Day morning. And again, I join Brother Rick in wishing all the mothers a happy Mother's Day. The Lord has a message for us today that will at first sound like it is a message to the mothers. And while it is a message to the mothers, it is also a message for each of us. So I encourage you, if you're not a mom, don't feel like you can take a nap and tune out the message. There is a message for us all. I invite you to turn with me to the book of Exodus, Exodus chapter 2. As we look into God's Word and we're reminded of the very difficult task of being a mother. Exodus chapter 2. And Lord, what message do you have? What are you wanting to teach me today? That needs to be your question. That needs to be your prayer. What are you wanting to teach me today in regard to my walk with you as we look into the life of a mother? Now, if any of you gentlemen have ever tried to carry all of the duties, perhaps your wife was ill, perhaps she was out of town for a period of time, and you tried to wear both hats and carry all the duties. Take care of the house, take care of the kids, provide a meal. Then you know the work that a mom does on a regular basis, a daily basis, and how we take it for granted. Perhaps you've observed a parent trying to do it alone, and you recognize how difficult it is. I want us to think about the culture and the custom of the day in which we're reading about. Because obviously, turning to Exodus chapter 2, we're going to read about the birth of a man named Moses. His parents were named Amram and Jochebed. And so we are learning about Jochebed specifically, but it's important as we read in Exodus chapter 2, there went a man of the house of Levi and took to wife a daughter of Levi, and the woman conceived and bare a son. And when she saw him that he was a goodly child, she hid him 3 months. When she could not longer hide him, she took for him an ark of bulrushes, dabbed it with slime and with pitch, put the child therein, and she laid it in the flags by the river's brink. And his sister stood afar off to wit what would be done to him. I want you to understand the setting as the Israelites have multiplied since going down into Egypt. There were 70 to begin with, and they have multiplied, and the Egyptians are fearing that the Hebrews are outnumbering them, and so they enslaved them. They began to persecute them, and they want to hold down on the growth of the population. So the Pharaoh of Egypt orders that all of the babies, the male babies, be thrown at birth, be thrown into the river. And so the midwives say the babies, the Hebrew women are so healthy that the babies come so quickly before we can get there. So he charged all the people. So every Egyptian basically became a spy, so to speak, to make sure the Hebrews were following through with the Pharaoh's order to throw the male babies into the river right after they're born. But the girls could be kept alive. So then we have our text where this man of the house of Levi takes a wife from the daughters of Levi, and she becomes pregnant and hides her child. I want you to see first that there was a planning faith. As Jochebed, she planned to be a godly woman. As a daughter of Levi, she married a man from the priestly tribe. She planned to be a godly woman. She was not afraid of the king's command. In fact, she saw that he was a goodly child, and so she hides him as long as she can. Prior to this proclamation, she had her first son, Aaron. Later, she had a daughter who was not threatened by the king's command at all, but a young girl now, Miriam. And now later, this baby, who she does not name, but places him, prepares this ark, if you will, of bulrushes. A basket is how we're taught in children's Sunday school. This basket dabbed with pitch so that he would be safe inside. I can imagine her placing some type of soft cloth in there for him to lie on. You understand that in word, in the letter of the law, she's obeying Pharaoh's command to throw Moses into the river. She just doesn't throw him, she places him, and she carefully preserves him. See, she had a planning faith. Did she know exactly what was going to take place? Absolutely not. But she knew that she believed in God. She knew God had blessed her with this baby, that she didn't feel right to take the baby's life, and she trusted God that he would somehow take care of the baby. This planning faith. I ask you, what plans are you making? What plans are you making? Proverbs says, many are the plans in a man's heart, but the Lord directs the steps. What kind of plans are you making? Are you a godly mother? And to everyone else, are you a godly man? A godly woman? Are your plans godly plans? That is, if you take your plan and you take it outside of your life and you put it just out here with no name attached to it, is that something that God would rubber stamp and say, I give my approval on that plan? That's a plan that honors me, whoever does it. Jochebed had a planning faith. She didn't know how it was going to work out, but she knew, I'm going to honor the life that you've given me, And I'm going to trust you, Lord, for the outcome. Oh, how I wish that we would recognize that our life, every single moment of every single day, is a gift. That's why we call it the present, right? It's a gift. We don't get it back. How we spend it, we will be accountable for before God. How we spend every moment. Do we plan to spend our moments in a godly way, in a way that honors Him? Do we think through this decision I'm making right now? What's going to follow? Let's read on. As she made that ark in verse 3 and placed it in the edge of the river, Miriam, his sister, standing afar off, seeing what would happen. So that shows us that she had a protecting faith. A protecting faith. First, she protected by how she prepared that little ark. But I want you to notice, before she prepared the ark, look at the very first part of verse 3. When she could not longer hide him. What does that mean? She could no longer hide him. Well, because he's beginning to grow. And we're beginning to bond. Now, all of us have been there. If you have children, you have been there where the baby wants one person. And it doesn't matter what anyone else tries to do. The baby's wanting the comfort of a mother. And the mother holds the baby to herself. And while no one else had the same effect, the baby immediately calms and quiets. She's beginning to bond with her baby. And may I say to you that even though this is a young baby, I can imagine this mother praying over her baby. I can imagine her passing her faith on to her baby. Our excuse today is that, well, the children are just too small. They're too young. We don't have to worry about those beginning days. But can I say to you that we're teaching them from day one? We're teaching them. They're learning. We're instilling values within them from day one. Perhaps you recall in one of my, I guess it was my very first time to be with you here at the church, we had our grandbaby with us. And then they came and surprised me the last time I was with you on Easter Sunday. My daughter and grandbaby showed up and they surprised me coming to church on Easter Sunday and being here with us. And I've been amazed. He turns 9 months old tomorrow. And I've been amazed at how he has grown so quickly in these 9 months, and how every time between the last time I saw him and the next time, how much he changes. And it amazed me how much he's learning. He's not formally being taught, but how much he's picking up by observing his parents, by observing his grandparents. It amazes me that he can hear the tune to Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, and his head will immediately turn to the television. That when he hears that at 9 months old, and the beat of Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. His favorite thing is to sit in the jumper and jump, and he begins to do his legs when he hears that beat. Now, he didn't hear that prior to coming out of the womb because my daughter did not sit around and listen to Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. But he has learned that during the 9 months. We're talking about 9 months old. He cannot speak yet. He's just beginning to make the sounds. The da-da and la-la and mama. He won't say papa, but everything prior to that, he just laughs when I ask him to say papa, just showing me. I probably could, but I'm not going to, But my point, he's learning. Not even 9 months old, and he's learning. My wife, when we were dating, was teaching in a preschool at the school that I was over, and she had 2-year-olds. And it amazed me, in this class of 2-year-olds, she taught them memory verses. Now, they weren't the King James Version, and they weren't long verses, but that 2-year-olds could learn, honor thy father and thy mother. That 2-year-olds could learn, blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. 2-year-olds quoting verses like these, and that just showed me they can learn. We have to take the time to teach them. We cannot use the excuse, well, they're too young. They're not too young to learn. The world's going to teach them something. We need to be careful what they hear. This mom, Moses' mom, had a protecting faith as she's bonding with her child, passing on her faith, and she builds this ark, which, by the way, is a picture of Jesus, an ark of safety, in the same way that Noah's ark was a place of safety and salvation. This ark made for Moses was a place of security, safety, and salvation, a picture of Christ. Then she puts him in the edge of the river, among the flags, among the reeds. So if you picture that, the law said throw him into the river. She places him in the basket, in the edge of the river, among the reeds, so the basket doesn't float off. It's lodged right there. It's safe. Miriam's got to watch from a distance. I think about Miriam watching. I was blessed to have 2 older sisters. One was 11 and the other was 13 when I was born. I say I was blessed today as a grown man. I didn't necessarily feel blessed when I was growing up with 2 older sisters, because I felt like I had 3 mothers. And I've said that it made marriage a whole lot easier for me, because I've grown up always having a woman telling me what to do. And so it just made marriage kind of smoother. Had a great relationship with my older sisters, but I do look at them, almost as much a mom as my mom, and have great respect for them. But our children should enjoy the protection of friends We should have such godly friends that we know everyone is looking out for our kids. We should have such a godly group around us, the village, that the world says, well, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, we need to make sure our village is filled with godly people who share our same values. And we know they're always looking out for our kids. Because I grew up in a small community, and I grew up where everybody knew everyone. And I grew up where if I got in trouble in town, the news beat me home. And then I was disciplined at home. But my parents didn't hold back saying, whoever catches him doing the wrong thing, you need to correct him right then. And then we'll take care of following up at home. I grew up with that safety, that security, that confidence, that everybody's watching out for me. Everybody cares about me. I grew up with a church family that when I was growing up and reaching milestones, thinking who I would invite to celebrate milestones, I wanted my church family there before I had my extended family. I rarely saw my extended family except for major holidays, but I saw my church family every week. So understand, a protecting faith. You know, I've learned that you cannot be with your children 24/7. You've got to trust that the Lord has got his eye on them and he'll care for them. And nothing's going to happen to them outside of his plan for them. But we need to protect more than just their physical being. I need to protect what goes into their minds. I need to protect what they see. I need to protect the influences in their lives. A study was done of the children of England who lived through World War II. Study was done and compared those that lived through the war with their parents and those who lost their parents. And as you might suspect, the ones who came out stronger and fared better overall were those who had the support of their parents. Children need their parents. A planning faith, a protecting faith. But let's continue in the story, beginning in verse 5. The daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash herself at the river, and her maidens walked along by the river's side. And when she saw the ark among the flags, she sent her maid to fetch it. And when she had opened it, she saw the child. Behold, the babe wept. She had compassion on him and said, "This is one of the Hebrews' children." And then said his sister to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and call to thee a nurse of the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for thee?" Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Go," and the maid went, called the child's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said unto her, "Take this child away, nurse it for me, and I'll give thee thy wages." And the woman took the child and nursed it. The child grew. She brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son, and she called his name Moses. And she said, "Because I drew him out of the water." I can imagine Jochebed as she places the baby in the basket, in the edge of the river, tells Miriam to keep an eye on it, and then she goes home to pray. And she doesn't know what's going to happen, but she's praying. And as we read that story, did you catch what happened? As God providentially saves Moses' life, because the first weapon that God chose to use to defend his people against the Egyptians were the tears of a baby. The baby was weeping, and that captured the heart of Pharaoh's daughter, and she wanted to do something to stop the baby from crying. She knew it's a Hebrew baby. It's going to take a Hebrew to nurse it. Miriam, standing by, she suggests, I'll go get someone. Of course, she went and got her mom. Her mom comes, Jochebed comes, and Pharaoh's daughter says, I'm going to pay you. Is this awesome or what? She was supposed to kill her child by Pharaoh's order. Now she's going to get paid to take care of her child, to raise her child. I want you to see a mother's wages. I know the thought going through moms' heads right now. I didn't know this was a paying gig. I've got some back pay coming here, right? I didn't know I was supposed to get paid. Well, let me ask you, have you ever observed your child acting exactly like you? And have you ever used the phrase, when they were acting exactly like you, or maybe reacting exactly like you, have you ever used the phrase, I am paying for my raising? Perhaps if so, you understand a mother's wages. So I want you to notice the wages in again, her faith caused what we're about to read about. I'm going to invite you to turn to the book of Hebrews. We're going to see, because Moses makes the hall of faith here in Hebrews chapter 11. And we're going to see this mother's wages. Look how she is paid. Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 23. By faith, Moses, when he was born, was hid 3 months of his parents, because they saw he was a proper child, and they were not afraid of the king's commandment. Now here's the wages. Verse 24. By faith, Moses, when he was come to years, that is, when he was grown, look at this, he refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. There we go. The wages are being paid right there. He said, this isn't how I was raised. This is not agree. That's what he's saying, because Jochebed raised him for the early years, and then he was sent to live at the palace. But he knew what he had been taught in his earliest years. And he knew that everything he was learning at the palace didn't line up with what he had been taught in the early years, because Jochebed had talked about honoring and worshiping the God of Israel, the creator of heaven and earth. In the palace, Pharaoh talked about worshiping all the different gods of Egypt. So he's in conflict. He knows what he's been taught, but he knows what he's observing now. And as a grown man, he says he refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. Look at verse 25. Choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season. That's some awesome wages right there. He chose pain instead of pleasure. Verse 26 says, esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures in Egypt, for he had respect unto the recompense of the reward. He chose the reproach of Christ. That is, he was looking to the reward rather than the immediate payout of the pleasures of Egypt. He's looking at a greater reward for the future. So verse 27 says, by faith he forsook Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king, for he endured as seeing him who is invisible. And then we know later in the story, through faith he kept the Passover and the sprinkling of blood, lest he that destroyed the firstborn should touch them. And by faith then they passed through the Red Sea as by dry land, which the Egyptians, trying to do, were drowned. If you look down in Hebrews chapter 12, he's among those who are witnesses to us. Hebrews 12 and verse 1. Wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let's lay aside every weight, the sin which doth so easily beset us, and run with patience the race that is set before us. Verse 2, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, despised the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God. He endured, Moses endured, having his eyes on the creator and sustainer of life, the God of heaven, the God of Israel. The challenge for us today, with a planning faith and a protecting faith and a praying faith, is to fulfill our duties as parents, both men and women, and trust God for the results. I want to tell you about a remarkable woman. She had 19 children. As you can imagine, being the mother to 19 children, she had their home running like a well-oiled machine. Their infant lives were regulated by method. Their sleep was even meted out by rule. Each child on its 5th birthday began regular lessons, and mom taught them all. She had marvelous ability, wonderful patience. And her success in the training and educating of her children has won her an unquestionable place among great mothers. Her name? Susanna Wesley, the mother of John and Charles Wesley, the founders of Methodism. That's an example of the wages of a mother. You think of the great men of God. Serving the Lord in His kingdom today. Can I say to you, first and foremost, there's the call of God on their life. God is at work. But it's not by accident that they were given to the parents that they were given to. I feel today like Timothy. Paul said to Timothy, he said, I know that the faith that you have, it's because of your mother and your grandmother, Lois and Eunice. I saw the faith in them, and I see it continuing in you. Well, if I could only have had the opportunity to introduce you to my grandmother. She lived next door to us as I was growing up. And my mom, still living today. I hope to see her later this evening. But I stand before you today, first because God called me, God equipped me, but because a grandmother and a mother faithfully, patiently taught me, modeled for me the faith that they hoped I would embrace and then pass on. I had a loving father. I had a loving grandfather. Neither of those men took the lead. My grandmother and my mother took the lead. And I'm forever grateful. I'm praying that as the Proverbs 31 woman that Brother Rick read about at the beginning of our service, you remember Proverbs 31, after all the great work that she did, her children rise up, call her blessed. Her husband praises her. Well, the point is, all the work that the Proverbs 31 woman did paid off in the lives of her children. Her community saw the work she had done. I pray that I can show the world the work that my mom has done, that I'll be faithful to my Savior all of my days. So moms, I ask you, what are your wages today? How are you being paid? Has the work you've done, is it a reflection of truly where your heart is and how you feel? You know, I'm reminded of a verse, and I want to encourage you with this verse. Proverbs 22:6. Perhaps you don't know the reference, but you'll remember the verse when I start quoting it. Train up a child in the way he should go. When he's old, he'll not depart from it. And perhaps as you're thinking about this message today, You're understanding the message, but the devil's creeping in and saying, well, you've got a child that has wandered off. You've got a prodigal son that's wandering, that's straying. Go back to Proverbs 22:6. Train up a child in the way he should go. And when he's old, it didn't say he would never stray, but when he's old, he'll not depart from it. And how many stories have I heard of the prodigals who said, I know how I was raised. And the entire time I was away, I wasn't at peace, and I knew I needed to come home. So again, we cannot, it's not our place actually to judge success or failure. We leave that to the Lord. It's our job to be faithful, diligent in our task as parents, as grandparents, to train up the children, to continue to instill the values, to pass on the faith, and trust God for the results. In just a few moments, we'll be observing the Lord's Supper. I want to challenge you in this time as we close the message and transition to that special observance. Challenge you to examine your heart, to ask the Lord to look into your heart. And I'll be using a prayer from the psalmist, and may this be your prayer. Having heard the word of God and preparing to celebrate communion with Him. Let's bow our heads.